There have been some sexual assault claims made by him. It's a chap called Derek Dixon. It's a $260 million lawsuit.
As I've observed Meghan over time, I think sometimes she becomes overbearing to people, to those who she thinks she can get something from.
Started with a simple act of generosity. Tyler Perry, a Hollywood mogul with the resources and the reach to protect almost anyone, threw open the gates of his Beverly Hills mansion to two royals on the run. When Harry and Meghan Markle stepped off the plane in California, they weren't just leaving behind a monarchy. They were shedding the weight of centuries, the judgment of the tabloids, and the quiet suffocation of palace walls. Or so they wanted everyone to believe. Because from the very beginning, this wasn't only about survival. It was about the story, the version of events that would be repeated in interviews, documentaries, memoirs. The tale of two misunderstood rebels finally free to tell their truth. But the truth is a fragile thing, especially when it's been polished, repackaged, and sold to the world like a limited edition collector's item. And now, the man who gave them sanctuary is sitting on a mountain of receipts that could tear the narrative to shreds. Tyler Perry wasn't just a friend with an empty guest house. He was the backbone of their California reinvention. When no one else would stick their necks out, Perry sent his private plane. He offered security teams and privacy screens, the kinds of protections no ordinary friend could ever provide. In return, he became part of their carefully curated mythology, mentioned just enough to prove how loved they were, never enough to overshadow their struggle. For a while it worked. Meghan and Harry had their dream scenario, a controlled environment where every word could be vetted, every photograph approved. But the illusion only lasted as long as Perry stayed silent. Because when the headlines shifted, when Perry found himself facing a $260 million lawsuit that threatened to stain his empire, the Sussexes did the unthinkable. They ghosted him. No statement of solidarity. No public defense, not even a line in one of Meghan's polished blog posts about gratitude and loyalty, just radio silence as if he'd never existed. And in that silence, something critical shifted. It's one thing to control a story when everyone plays along. It's another to keep the curtain drawn when the person holding the ropes decides he's had enough. Insiders have whispered for months that Perry didn't just offer them a place to stay. He documented everything. Emails, voice notes, late-night calls, conversations about Netflix strategies, Oprah interviews, the delicate art of crying on camera without looking rehearsed. If even a fraction of those files exist, it could prove what skeptics have suspected all along, that the Sussexes' public vulnerability was scripted to perfection. You have to wonder if Harry ever thought this day would come. He once told Anderson Cooper that silence is betrayal, a quote he loved to repeat whenever he felt the royal family wasn't speaking up in his defense. But when it was Perry's turn to need support, Meghan and Harry didn't just stay silent, they erased him. Posts disappeared, photos vanished, any mention of Perry's involvement evaporated from their official platforms. First glance, it looked like panic control, a PR team scrubbing any association with a lawsuit. But the deeper you look, the more it feels like a calculated move to protect their brand. If Perry went down, they'd survive as long as they distanced themselves in time. What they may not have realized is that distance has consequences. Legal experts have hinted that the Sussexes had agreements in place with Perry, NDAs that preserved everyone's secrets. But buried in those contracts was a clause no one ever expected to come into play. Perry was publicly abandoned, he'd be free to talk, free to show the receipts, free to tell his version no matter how damning it might be. And that freedom could be the match that sets fire to everything Meghan and Harry built. 'Cause for all the teary interviews and heartfelt monologues about oppression and healing, this has always been a business, an enterprise built on the currency of victimhood. And if Perry comes forward to confirm that every revelation was planned in advance, that the docuseries was staged, the interviews rehearsed, then the Sussex brand isn't just dented, it's obliterated. Overnight, the brave survivors become cynical opportunists, and the public goodwill they traded on evaporates. People are already questioning how deep the deception might go. When Meghan and Harry announced that Perry was Lilibet's godfather, it sounded like a touching gesture, a nod to chosen family over royal tradition. But there were no photos, no christening records, not a single formal acknowledgement from the palace, just a line dropped in a Netflix episode, a line that now feels suspiciously convenient. Was it even real? or just another prop in the grand production of their freedom story? Social media isn't waiting for confirmation. Hashtags like Tyler Knows All and Receipt Season have started trending as former fans dissect old interviews frame by frame. Every warm anecdote is being re-examined for inconsistencies. Every teary confession is being compared to the timeline of business deals. It's a digital autopsy of the Sussex narrative, and the results aren't looking good. Even die-hard supporters are wavering. You can see it in the comment sections, the think pieces, the nervous tone of celebrity defenders who once championed Meghan as a feminist icon. They're hedging now, using phrases like "if this is true" and assuming these claims hold water. 'Cause everyone knows what's at stake. Harry breaks his silence. He doesn't have to fabricate a single detail. All he has to do is show the messages, the recordings, the memos, and the whole castle comes crashing down. Meanwhile, in Montecito, the Sussexes are scrambling. Harry quietly slipped back to the UK without cameras trailing behind. No official reason was given, but insiders claim he met with legal advisors to prepare for the possibility that Perry might go public. Meghan, on the other hand, stayed behind to keep the optics intact, posing for polished photos with their children, sharing lifestyle tips, and pushing content designed to distract. But distraction only works when people are willing to look away. This time, the world is staring straight at them, and no soft-focus Instagram filter is going to save them. The irony is almost poetic. For years, Meghan and Harry accused the monarchy of manipulation and spin. They presented themselves as the antithesis of palace PR, the honest voices brave enough to say what everyone else was too afraid to admit. But now, the line between authenticity and performance has blurred so completely that even their supporters can't tell where the truth ends and the show begins. Harry steps forward, that ambiguity will disappear. People will finally see what was happening behind the closed gates of that Beverly Hills estate. The hush-hush strategy sessions. The phone calls about how to frame every setback as an act of resilience. The bullet-pointed plans for monetizing heartbreak. And in that revelation, the Sussexes' greatest asset, control of their own narrative, will vanish. 'Cause it's one thing to craft your story when no one can challenge it. It's another to defend it when your most trusted confidant is holding the evidence. Brands are already watching from the sidelines. Meghan's philanthropic projects, Harry's mental health advocacy, the polished Netflix specials. They all depend on public trust. If Harry's evidence shows that trust was misplaced, endorsements will dry up overnight. No corporation wants to be associated with a couple exposed as architects of their own victimhood. And without those partnerships, the Sussexes' entire post-royal empire is at risk. What's more chilling is that Perry hasn't said a word. He doesn't need to. His silence is its own form of power, a quiet reminder that he can end the illusion whenever he chooses. While Meghan and Harry rush to repair their image, Perry is reportedly sorting through his records, consulting legal advisors, and deciding just how much he's willing to reveal. And that uncertainty is more dangerous than any tabloid headline. 'Cause the moment he speaks, it won't be anonymous insiders whispering in the shadows. It'll be a respected industry heavyweight with nothing left to lose and all the receipts in hand. And when that day comes, no amount of spin will be enough to hide the truth. For now, the Sussexes are clinging to their last defenses. Carefully curated blog posts, photo ops designed to project normalcy, and the hope that Perry will stay quiet. But the public isn't buying it. Every new piece of content is met with skepticism. Every heartfelt caption feels like damage control. Even the most sympathetic headlines are peppered with disclaimers and qualifiers. 'Cause everyone senses that the reckoning is close. In the end, this story isn't just about Tyler Perry or a lawsuit. It's about the price of building your life around a narrative you can't control forever. Meghan and Harry bet everything on their ability to spin personal pain into global relevance. But they forgot one crucial rule: receipts don't lie. And the man holding them isn't some faceless tabloid reporter. He's the person they trusted most. So as Perry weighs his options and the world waits, the Sussexes face the most terrifying possibility of all: that the story they fought so hard to own might never have been theirs in the first place. And if that's true, it's not just their reputation at stake. It's their legacy. Carefully constructed myth of authenticity and bravery could unravel in a single interview. And when it does, the fallout won't be a PR headache. It'll be the end of the fairy tale, and the start of a reckoning no amount of spin can erase. What makes this entire saga so unsettling isn't just the idea that Harry and Meghan might have curated their story. It's how easy it was for so many people to believe it. When they first stepped onto American soil, carrying the weight of royal scandal, people rushed to embrace them. Celebrities lined up to offer support. Journalists framed them as symbols of progress, champions of mental health, voices for the voiceless. The narrative was almost too perfect. Two glamorous exiles standing up to centuries of tradition, bearing their souls for the greater good. But as time passed, the cracks began to show. Every new revelation seemed suspiciously timed. Every exclusive interview came with a lucrative contract. The line between honesty and branding blurred until it was impossible to tell the difference. And through it all, Tyler Perry stood quietly in the background, a witness to every phone call, every meltdown, every strategic calculation. Insiders say that in those early days in Los Angeles, Perry's mansion wasn't just a place of refuge. It was a war room. Meghan and Harry allegedly spent countless hours strategizing with their advisors, plotting how to reframe their exit from the royal family into a narrative of triumph. Some staff members reportedly felt uncomfortable with how calculated it all seemed. How every misfortune became a potential headline, every conflict an opportunity to stoke public sympathy. It's no accident that when the Netflix deal was finally announced, it sounded more like the next phase of a campaign than a fresh start. According to industry insiders, Perry was privy to private discussions about how the docuseries should be edited, what angles to emphasize, and which anecdotes would resonate most with American audiences. If even a portion of those conversations were recorded, they could provide damning proof that the Sussexes' most emotional confessions were rehearsed to maximize impact. And if that happens, the fallout won't just be personal. It will be professional. Netflix and Spotify poured millions into the Sussex brand, counting on the promise of unfiltered authenticity. Perry's files show those promises were nothing more than carefully constructed performances. The legal consequences could be catastrophic. Executives don't take kindly to being misled, especially when their reputation is on the line. That's the part Meghan and Harry's defenders don't want to talk about. This isn't only a PR crisis, it's a potential breach of contract, a question of whether the Sussexes knowingly sold a narrative they couldn't back up. And if they did, the legal and financial repercussions could dwarf any scandal they faced in the UK. Meanwhile, Perry's team is reportedly fielding offers from every major media outlet. Insiders say at least 3 networks have reached out with multi-million-dollar proposals for exclusive interviews. Book publishers are circling too, eager to land the rights to what could become one of the most explosive memoirs in Hollywood history. The irony is impossible to ignore. The very man who sheltered Meghan and Harry from the press could be the one to expose them to the harshest spotlight they've ever faced. And while Perry's silence persists, it's becoming a kind of psychological torment for the Sussexes. Every day he stays quiet, the tension grows. Will he talk? Will he release the emails? Or is this all a bluff designed to remind them just how much he knows? That uncertainty is proving more damaging than any headline. It's a constant reminder that for all their talk of transparency, Meghan and Harry are terrified of the unfiltered truth. Because the unfiltered truth doesn't come with stylists and lighting crews. It doesn't come with pre-approved scripts or safe questions. The unfiltered truth is messy, complicated, and often unflattering. And if Perry decides to share it, the Sussexes will finally have to face the same ruthless scrutiny they once aimed at the royal family. Some observers believe this reckoning has been inevitable from the start. For years, the Sussexes insisted they were simply telling their story, exposing injustices no one else was brave enough to confront. But the pattern is impossible to ignore. Every revelation coincided with a new project launch. Every bombshell interview boosted their profile, paving the way for bigger deals and fatter checks. And while the public was willing to forgive a lot in the name of progress, there's one thing people can't stomach: being played. Perry's records reveal that the Netflix specials were carefully orchestrated, that the tears were practiced and the outrage planned. It will confirm the worst suspicions of their critics. It will prove that the Sussexes didn't just share their pain, they commodified it. They packaged it for sale, leveraged it for sympathy, and weaponized it against anyone who dared to question their motives. That's why this story feels like a tipping point, because even the most devoted supporters are running out of ways to justify the inconsistencies. The rushed birth announcements, the vague godfather claims, the sudden disappearance of photos and mentions when Perry became a liability. It all points to one conclusion. The Sussex brand was never as pure as it appeared. And what happens when people finally accept that? The backlash will be swift and unforgiving. Brands that once celebrated Meghan and Harry as icons of authenticity will distance themselves in record time. Philanthropic organizations that relied on their star power will quietly erase them from campaigns. The very media outlets that once championed their cause will pivot to tearing them down. 'Cause nothing sells faster than a fallen hero. For Perry, the stakes are different. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. His reputation as a filmmaker and businessman is secure. If he chooses to speak out, it won't be because he wants attention. It will be because he's tired of carrying other people's secrets, tired of being the silent guardian while the world speculates, tired of watching his own name get dragged through the mud while the Sussexes pretend he never existed. And that's what makes this so dangerous for Meghan and Harry. Because if Perry decides to open the vault, he doesn't have to exaggerate or embellish. All he has to do is confirm what he saw. And that confirmation alone could unravel everything. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team is working overtime to manage the narrative. They're reportedly offering off-the-record briefings to sympathetic journalists, trying to frame Perry as a disgruntled friend lashing out. But that strategy has a fatal flaw. Perry isn't some nameless palace aide or anonymous tabloid source. He's a respected figure with a track record of integrity. If he says the Sussexes were orchestrating their exit for profit, people will believe him. And in that moment, the final illusion will shatter. The illusion that Meghan and Harry were simply victims of circumstance. The illusion that their pain was raw and unfiltered. The illusion that they left the royal family to find peace rather than profit. When that illusion crumbles, what remains is a story no amount of PR can fix. It's a story about two people who learned how to weaponize their own tragedy, who turned personal grievance into a global brand. A story about carefully timed revelations, strategic alliances, and the quiet calculation that emotion sells better than honesty. And most of all, it's a story about what happens when you trust the wrong person to keep your secrets. Perry has no obligation to stay silent forever. The only reason he hasn't spoken is because he knows the power of restraint. But every day that restraint is tested, every whisper, every leak, every reminder that the Sussexes would rather erase him than stand by him. And eventually, even the most patient man runs out of reasons to stay quiet. When that day comes, Meghan and Harry will face the reckoning they've spent years trying to avoid. The receipts will surface, carefully crafted narrative will implode, and the public will see exactly how much of the Sussex story was built on a foundation of selective truth. Because in the end, no matter how much they try to control the story, no matter how many glossy photos they post or think pieces they commission, one reality remains unshakable. Receipts don't lie. And Tyler Perry has them all. Some people still cling to the hope that this will all blow over, that Perry will decide to protect the Sussexes out of loyalty, or simply because it's easier to stay quiet. But that hope feels more like denial than strategy, because Perry has already shown the world that he's willing to take decisive action when his principles are on the line. He didn't hesitate to step in when Meghan and Harry needed a place to hide. He didn't waver when they asked for security, or when they needed a voice of validation in the middle of a public meltdown. He was their lifeline in the storm. If he feels betrayed, if he believes their silence is a stain on his character, there's no guarantee he'll continue to protect them. And the timing couldn't be worse. Couple is already under pressure to deliver on the promises they made to their partners. Netflix expects more content. Spotify is reportedly still smarting from the fallout of the canceled podcast deal. Their charitable foundation is under scrutiny for where the money goes, how it's spent, and what's actually being accomplished. Every new controversy chips away at their credibility. Perry's testimony confirms that the entire enterprise was designed to manipulate public sentiment. It will obliterate whatever goodwill they have left. People are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Why did Harry really leave the UK in the middle of this crisis? Was it a desperate attempt to shore up support from the only institution that still has power over their titles? Was he negotiating behind closed doors to salvage what little protection the royal family can still offer? The palace, for all its faults, knows how to circle the wagons when necessary, but even they may hesitate to intervene if Perry is prepared to go public with evidence of calculated deceit. And while Harry plots in the shadows, Meghan remains the visible face of their brand. Every new photo she posts, every carefully posed moment with their children, feels like an echo of the old tactics: distraction, sentimentality, the gentle suggestion that she's just a mother trying to do her best. But this time, fewer people are buying it. Public is exhausted by the contradictions, the gaps in the story, the convenient timing of every confession. They want answers, not another polished photo spread. Even the Hollywood machine is showing signs of turning. Executives who once tripped over themselves to be associated with the Sussexes are quietly stepping back. Their names don't carry the same weight they did 3 years ago. What once felt like a cultural revolution now feels like a cautionary tale. A reminder that no matter how famous you are, trust can't be manufactured. It has to be earned, and once it's lost, it rarely comes back. Some observers believe Perry's silence is strategic, that he's giving the Sussexes one last chance to acknowledge him, to repair the relationship before he makes his move. But if that's true, they're running out of time. Every day that passes without so much as a word from their camp is another day Perry's patience thins. And when it finally snaps, the fallout will be swift and merciless. 'Cause this isn't just about old emails or forgotten phone calls. It's about the integrity of their entire story. And in the end, that's what will hurt the most. Not the lost deals or the scathing headlines or the whispers behind closed doors. The real devastation will be knowing that the very person who saved them from obscurity is the same one who held the key to their undoing. A single interview, a single file, a single moment of honesty from Tyler Perry could reduce their empire to rubble. And when that happens, the question won't be how it all fell apart. It will be why they ever thought they could hide the truth forever.